Hi everyone, welcome to the Mental Health Podcast. Remember the name of my own podcast. Hi everyone, welcome to the Mental Health Takeaways, the male mental health podcast that's making a big difference to people's lives. Now, if you haven't seen the social media build-up to today's episode, we have Seb on. Seb is a personal trainer, but he is also a certified mental health and exercise coach, which means that his clients, when they go to see him, are able to have access to his knowledge when it comes to developing their physical health, but also access to his knowledge when it comes to developing their mental health. Now, we talk a little bit about Seb's work, but we also talk about his own personal mental health, showing that men actually can disprove that myth and we can talk about mental health, other people's and our own. Before we show you a couple of clips about what's coming up in the show, let's just check that you're in the right place, because this is going to be important. If you are tuning into this podcast to hear something like, "Welcome to the Male Mental Health Podcast, where we show you the top mind tricks that the elite alpha males use to be the most dominant force in the room," then you're going to be sorely disappointed. However, if you want to hear three normal guys having a conversation about mental health, but that conversation is informed by our relative knowledge and experience and qualifications, with Seb as a certified mental health and exercise coach, myself, Matt Nibb, as a mental health first aid instructor, both adult and youth, and my co-host Brad as a solution-focused hypnotherapist, we're going to add a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of information into this conversation, but we're having the conversation as normal guys, not those bro science podcasters that are all like, "And I tell you what else you need to do if you want to be the most elite man in the room," all that crap. We're not here for that. Couple of bits to look out for in today's episode. We hear Seb talk about where his confidence comes from and how much he cares about what he looks like when he's already feeling good.
But again, we all get that. We all have those days where we might look at ourselves in the mirror and think, "Oh, okay, I don't look the same," and it's a strange thing, really. But I know for a fact that if my mental health's good, I'm feeling energized, I couldn't really give a shit about how I look, to be honest. To put it bluntly.
That's a really valid point.
If I'm feeling good, I'm feeling confident. I've slept well, energy levels are good. Couldn't be happier, really.
And Seb also shares this example of a client that he worked with and the transformation that client achieved when he addressed both his mental and physical health in tandem with each other.
He had so much more energy. He was happier. He was much nicer to be around. He was more productive. He was more focused. And that had an impact on his relationships. It just goes way beyond just that physical transformation. And I think that, for me, that was one of the biggest wins.
It's a great episode. I'm really looking forward to you guys hearing it. And please don't forget to share it far and wide, because there is somebody out there that will need to hear this.
Seb, thank you so much for coming on the show. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you on. The way that we kick off our show is we start off talking about something that we feel is really easy for everybody to talk about and share their experiences about. And that is takeaways. So, going into this, what we'd like to know from you is, what is your go-to takeaway? If we're going to order a takeaway in now for you, or on any given night, whatever takeaway night might be for you, what would your takeaway choices be? And can you just tell us a little bit about that, the reasons for the choices and who you might be with and those sorts of things?
Oh, you know what? I love this question. Well, you know what? I don't think I have a favorite. I mean, can I give you a selection, possibly, depending on how I'm feeling?
I think in 2024 you can't you? You can be like, "I'll have the chips from here, I'll have that from there, I'll have that from there."
I mean,
that isn't like a viable option now.
There's so many options now, isn't there? I mean, I think, to be fair, I think my go-to would be chicken. I love fried chicken. Okay. It is pretty simple. I love a KFC. That is something that I could never say no to that. But sometimes it might be a Chinese. Again, it depends. And also my partner as well. We've got to make a mutual decision. That's the thing. That's where sometimes the disagreements come in. But Yeah, either top two, Chinese or KFC, I'd say.
And whether you're going like KFC or Chinese, what would
Mm.
your order be at either of those?
Yeah, it's always the same. I think it's got to be because you know what you get and it's safe. If I'm gonna have a Chinese, and we normally get sweet and sour chicken balls. We get chicken chow mein. We might get a satay chicken as well on the side. Some chips and egg fried rice.
Can I just
Cool.
jump in there?
Mm.
Something that's leapt to my mind based on what you said about KFC being safe, like you know what you're getting. I heard this fascinating piece of insight. I think it was this week that Usain Bolt is widely known to be. Brad, have I mentioned this on the podcast before?
I don't think so.
About that? Okay, good. That Usain Bolt is widely rumored to have always gone for chicken nuggets before a race, and that people thought that there was a slight sort of comedy element to that. But apparently, he has said to people he has had more trouble with food from 5-star restaurants where it's been cooked by a proper chef and cooked properly than he's had trouble with food from McDonald's. You never have a bad McDonald's. I don't know anyone that's ever been sick off of a McDonald's. And what he was saying was that when physical performance is absolutely key to what happens next in his life, like how he performs physically, he can't be risking it with some food that somebody's decided this ingredient and that ingredient goes together. He needs a known quantity, and for him that known quantity is chicken nuggets from McDonald's. So wherever you are in the world, that's going to be exactly the same. So he can base the rest of his preparation around those chicken nuggets and know that is going to be a constant. That's not going to change for me, whether I'm racing in China, whether I'm racing in Germany, whether I'm racing in the States. So, and that's why he went for the chicken nuggets. And it just pinged when you said about KFC being safe. I thought that was interesting. And obviously, physical performance is a part of your daily life as well, Seb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I think with that, I've never thought of it like that, actually. You made a really good point there about it being the same no matter where you go. But I mean, I think in terms of me having it as a safe bet, it's just easy. It never fails, to be honest. And my order would be a bucket for one, because you get the most amount of chicken in there with the KFC.
Now, hang on a minute. You were talking about the presence of your partner. Is your partner not a KFC fan, or are you?
You know what? No, she does. She likes a KFC, but not as much as me. I think she'd rather have like a Domino's. I think that's kind of her go-to. But I mean, yeah, I like a Domino's as well.
So given your line of work, Seb, because for most people, like a takeaway is a bit of a blowout thing, and people kind of just throw caution to the wind, like it's all out the window. Does it have any sort of play in terms of what you're ordering, your job, and kind of the decisions you make?
So if I'm the way I look at it, if I'm going to order a takeaway or I'm going to go out for a nice meal, I don't limit myself. I have that meal and I order what I want to order, you know what I mean, for the full enjoyment. And I say this to clients quite often, if you're going to go out and you're going to have a nice meal, just do it less often. And then you can fully appreciate the meal in front of you and you don't have any restrictions there. But yeah, I don't tend to think about, in terms of calories and nutrients. I just order what I want to order for that because it's more of a special occasion.
Nice.
You know what I mean?
I think that's really interesting, and I think people will enjoy hearing that. I often have conversations with clients if it's kind of around like weight management and stuff, and because there's so many like fads and diets and stuff that celebrities are doing, and I always just kind of bring people back to like moderation and the fact that actually, just be happy with what you're doing, and like you said then, if you are going out, don't worry about it. Don't do it every weekend, but don't worry. Go out and enjoy it, and kind of get the kind of mental health benefits of going out and having that food, as well as experiencing something nice.
Exactly.
I have a question for both. Well, I've got two questions for both of you, but I'll start with this one. Seb, if you would tell us a little bit about what actually you do in your role, and then Brad, if you tell us a little bit about you being a hypnotherapist, just because we might have new listeners being attracted to the show. And then I've got a question that I want you both to answer after that. So, yeah, Seb, would you tell us a little bit about actually what you do and how the ways in which you work?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I mean, I've been over the years, my role as a coach, if you like, has changed slightly ever since becoming a certified mental health and exercise coach, and that was 2 years ago. So kind of prior to that, it was more about just physical health, physical transformations, improving, clients' performance and overall health and stamina, all of those things. But then I realized kind of that something was missing. I could help my clients on such a deeper level. And I had some elements in there where I was throwing in a bit of mental health because I was recognizing that it had an impact on that and made them feel good. So that was kind of where I looked into this mental health and exercise qualification. And now I help clients generally with all markers of their health as opposed to just physical, because it's crazy. I think it's only about 14% physical health in comparison to all the other 7 markers. So yeah, and it's just creating a nice, safe and open space for people to talk about their mental health, to improve different areas when it comes to, things like, we look at things like the byproducts of exercise. So these are things like courage, confidence, self-worth, building a community, all of these other elements as well, which is incredible, which is why I love it and why I'm in the industry. So that's kind of where I'm at now in terms of my training and my coaching.
I just think that's so key that there's that appreciation of physical health being, what did you say, 14% of overall health makeup, and also that exercise can have benefits well beyond the physical. And Brad, I was curious for maybe for me to know a little bit, but also for our listeners to hear about how you deal with like behavior change with your clients.
Like you said, Nibbo, I just like echo that. It seems like such a gap to have, people working on the body but not the mind, or the mind and not the body, because those two things are, innately linked. And it must be amazing, actually. I bet you see some amazing results by tuning into both of those elements as opposed to just one. I'm really curious about that, and I'm conscious you've asked me a question, but I think if we can come back to that, Seb, because
of course we can come back to it.
I'd love to know more about that. So yeah, in terms of my role as a hypnotherapist, I sometimes work with people in terms of sports performance, but I don't do anything physical. I don't all of a sudden meet them at the gym. They still come to my practice room. I'll often see clients around weight management, which I'm always really careful. And my website, it's about weight management. So it might be about trying to gain weight and muscle mass and those sorts of things. But invariably, people come to see me because they want to lose weight. And I don't really look at the physical element of it, because it's about getting people operating out of their intellectual mind and making better choices. And it links to what you were saying, Seb, about actually low self-esteem, lack of confidence. And that's really important. So when I work with clients and we start to focus in much more positively on what's going on in their world, and then setting some goals, some little goals, about how they can start to align the ducks, whether that be about food choices or exercise decisions or whatever it happens to be, that's the line that we go down. So it's much more around, actually, if you're operating from a good headspace, you'll make better decisions about what you do. And that invariably, we might start off with food, but then it will link to exercise, and then it might link to sleep, and it might link to other bad habits that affect all of those things, and slowly removing them.
I love that, Brad. With that in mind, then, and we'll come back to your question, Brad, because it's your question to Seb about the results he sees when he concentrates on both elements. But what I wanted to know just quickly from both of you is, with each of your clients, when you talk about having a meal, like a treat meal, and going out for it, do you ever find that they then want to choose the healthier option because they're in that new mindset of actually, I've done a load of work to get the progress that I've got, and actually the meal I want now is the high protein, low carb, low calorie meal, or the pizza with a hole in the middle, or whatever it might be. That's actually the food I want now, rather than, I don't feel like I'm denying myself. I feel like that is what I'm craving. I wondered if we go Seb first and then Brad with that one.
Yeah, that's good question. I think what the approach that I say to them is it all comes down to their values. So understanding, and I always say to them, is eating with intention and attention at the same time. And, you know, if you are going out with your friends and you're going for a meal, you got to think, you know, is this something that I want right now? If I'm going to have this pizza, how am I going to feel after? And it's not a case of holding yourself back in the moment. If it's something that you want to do, then you should do that completely. And I think you kind of said it a bit earlier, Brad, about, you know, being the right time in the right place. You know, if you're out with your friends, then it should be done. It's something that you enjoy. And if you value them and you value your company, then I think it's important that you do that.
Do you know what? That's me with alcohol. In terms of the vast majority of the time, I end up thinking, do I want the downside? Do I want tomorrow morning? And as a single parent, like, time is pressured. Do I want to potentially lose a morning up until midday, just like rubbing my head and asking myself, "Oh, what have I done?" And I end up thinking, I don't want that. So I'll have 2 shandies and I'll call it a night and thank you very much. Brad, what did you think about that? Do you see your clients then wanting healthier food anyway?
Yeah, I think it's about them becoming more comfortable in the choices that they make. So I've had discussions in the past with people where it's like, actually, let's change nothing, but let's just adjust the portion size. And of course, the big part about what I do is I never say to a client, you should do this. My job is to get them to figure out what it is that they need to do. So it's them coming up with the idea that actually, you know, I eat, you know, I've had clients come to me and say, I eat generally fairly well. You know, and it's balanced and it's all of those things, but actually their portion size is not quite right. Likewise, I've had a client, so I had quite an extreme client a little while ago who has sort of yo-yo dieted their whole life, like to the point where when they were on the sort of diet phase, they would literally have boiled cabbage. And that would be it. Now, like, that's not healthy in any way, shape or form. And so they would lose an absolute shed load of weight, but then they would just go completely to the other end of the spectrum because there's no moderation, there's no balance. And I think that's one of the things that I really like about Seb's work, is that actually it's not just about body and it's not just about balance in terms of the body, it's balance of what's going on in your brain and the mind as well, because I think that's how, and I don't think anyone would argue this, I think that's how you get the lifelong success. You know, it's not sustainable to go like, right, I'm going to have 6 months of like boiled cabbage and lose loads of weight. Like, no one can do that for very long.
Whereas when fat.
Yeah. When you build someone's, you know, their confidence and their self-esteem to make better choices, they want to start to do those things themselves and make better choices. And so, yeah, so that's where I come at it from. And often the people that I see are making really bad decisions, like, you know, and I could be talking about going into a shop, literally like stockpiling biscuits and crisps and all of that, going outside and eating the majority of it because there's shame involved and they don't want, you know, a partner or a family member knowing that they've binged all of that stuff. And they're just in this cycle, you know, that they can't get out of unless they get some support with that. So I always go back to, you know, balance and moderation. You know, that's the key, I think. I think people want to make good choices. They just fall into bad habits. And those habits can be really hard to break.
Yeah. Yeah. Good points, Brad. Thank you.
Yeah.
Brad, were you saying that you had a question for Seb around the results he sees when he looks at both elements?
I'm curious, almost like, have you got an example of somebody who came to you and that you just had real success with?
For me, like a huge win is when a client comes in to get a physical transformation. They say that they're there for their physical health, and they're there, to look a certain way, which is pretty much the majority of people that go into a gym, right?
Yeah.
For me, like for someone to come to me wanting that, but then I'm able to educate them on all the benefits of exercise and the impact it actually has on their life. There's one client specifically who I was training for about a year and a half, and he came in just for the physical aspect, and we kind of delved a bit deeper, and we said that he was basing his self-worth on the way that he looked, but we actually realized that there's so much more to life, and the impact it has was absolutely huge. He had so much more energy, he was happier, he was much nicer to be around, he was more productive, he was more focused, and that had an impact on his relationships. It just goes way beyond just that physical transformation, and I think that for me that was one of the biggest wins. And it happens more and more often now. So
there's just so much, isn't there? There's so much, so many benefits around being physically active, but then also having someone like you there, Seb, who's going to hold those benefits up back to the person and say, look at what you've achieved, and for them to say, and you'll never guess what I've achieved outside of the gym as well. Like you're saying, being a nicer person to be around and being having more energy, the sort of stuff that you might not get to see in the gym, but they, by the sounds of it, are coming to you and saying, I'm achieving this outside of the gym as well because of the work I'm doing in the gym.
Yeah, 100%. It's giving it so much more meaning and purpose, isn't it?
Yeah, meaning and purpose.
And we say, I always say it's being intrinsically motivated, where you're actually moving as a lifestyle and doing it for the sheer love of it, rather than just trying to reach a specific goal, as an example, to get shredded, or if you like, but actually moving because it's something that, that feels good, that's impacting your life in so many different ways.
Yeah.
So,
I think there's a couple of really good points to that. Is that kind of image, and I think lots of men have this, the kind of perception of what they feel they should look like. I saw an interesting article a little while ago, and they did it for men and women, and it was like a survey really of what women thought the ideal figure looked like and what men thought the ideal figure looked like of women and men respectively. Men, obviously, their kind of ideal view was, like big, broad shoulders, ripped, six-pack, all of that sort of stuff. Whereas women's perception of what was really attractive in a man was way more towards the dad bod, like not massively overweight, but actually not really that into the whole rip thing. And I think even to get like that, I think I've heard a lot of people say, they might look great when they're like that, but actually you're pretty miserable when you're like that because of the extremes you have to go to in your diet. And you'd know more about that than I would, Seb. But I imagine it's got to be so restrictive in terms of what you're eating that, your mental health does take a bit of a whack, I'd imagine.
Yeah, when you do take it to those extremes, I'm not discrediting bodybuilding, but it's all about getting down to that specific body fat percentage for a show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Just to look good on that stage for that event. The build up to that, the impact it has, I'm sure, on their mental health must be huge. Again, it's just kind of teaching on a wider perspective. Like, I think it's teaching people kind of exercise as being a way of, not a necessity, more of an accessory and more short term, more of like a short term fix. When I get to this goal or when I look this way, I will be happy. When it shouldn't be like that at all. It shouldn't be like that. And a lot of people will see really bodybuilders online, they'll see all these images and they'll try and match that physique, but in reality they don't realize how much they need to put themselves through it to get there. and then they don't actually make it, and then they go, well, this doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say, we don't have time to go into it, but I would say that probably that happens with loads of people in loads of areas of their life. When I get this job, I'll feel this way.
Yeah.
When I get this car, I'll feel this way. When I get this body fat percentage, I'll feel this way. And then they get there, and then they look around and go, I don't feel that way. It's what iPhone do with their adverts of like, get an iPhone and you'll have all these attractive friends. Because look at all these attractive people that are in this advert, and then you get your iPhone, you're like, where's all my new mates?
Where are they?
Like, my mates are still ugly. What's going on? But I think loads of people do that with loads of areas of their lives. If we're all right we're going to move on to the Would You Rathers. Brad, that cool with you?
Can I just chuck one more thing in, just to pick up
for God's sake.
Something else you said. Shut up. Something else you said, Seb, was it that kind of basing life around the physical, and actually that being the sort of the source of happiness, if you like. And I think probably one of the things that you were alluding to in that example is that actually when you support somebody with their journey in terms of their mental health and their confidence, I think the other stuff comes along probably quite nicely. So a way that I often frame this with my clients is that, those days where you might be going out, maybe you got a date or you're just going out for dinner or something, and you get dressed up, and then you look in the mirror and you think, whoa, I am looking good tonight. Like, and you feel like actually, you're looking good in your outfit and your hair's good and everything just feels good. And then you might do something like the next day or a couple of days later and look in the mirror and be like, Jesus, what, and you haven't changed physically at all. So the only difference in that context is your mindset. So when you're confident, you see that much better view of yourself. But when you're lacking in confidence and your self-esteem's low, you don't see that. And again, I just think that's one of the massive benefits that I must make your job so awesome to get all of that rolled into one, and for people to start to recognize that about themselves.
I think I always say, like, confidence, like that word, I think comes from the inside. Like being your most confident self is when it's hard to reach it, but when you no longer care what anybody else thinks. And you just kind of be authentically you, like internally. I think, and even myself, like, I consider myself to be in fairly good shape. But again, we all get that. We all have those days where we might look at ourselves in the mirror and think, oh, okay, I don't look the same, and it's a strange thing, really. But I know for a fact that if my mental health's good, I'm feeling energized, I couldn't really give a shit about how I look, to be honest. To put it bluntly.
That's a really valid point.
If I'm feeling good, I'm feeling confident. I've slept well, energy levels are good. Couldn't be happier, really.
Well, that is takeaways and a whole lot more.
Yeah, so, really good.
Yeah. I don't think we need to specify, Nibbo, do we? Do we want a KFC decision or a Chinese decision, or are we just happy to go with?
I told you it's 2024.
You want to know?
Oh, do we go on?
You want me to decide which one comes first?
Should we push him? Yeah, go on, Seb. Yeah, what is top of the tree?
It's gonna have to be the chicken. It's gonna have to be KFC. I think if I said something else, then I know my partner would. Yeah, she'd be like, yeah, you'll never say no to chicken. So
cool.
That's the winner. That's the winner.
I'll dial that in then. That bucket for one.
Yeah. So what we will do here is we're going to jump into your Would You Rather questions. There's the third one I was really undecided about, and I might change it. Who knows? Or you might end up with 4 Would You Rather questions. We normally go with the magic 3. But anyway, I saw an interview with Chris Williamson, who is big in mental health, but he's big in physical health as well. And he was asked a slightly different version of the same question, but I'm going to put it to you. Would you rather have 10% more mental strength or 10% more physical strength?
Oh, I would say mental strength.
Oh,
Definitely say I would say
purple,
10% more mental strength. Can you define what you mean by mental strength, though,
Yeah, that's
particularly?
really interesting, isn't it? Because Brad and I see loads of parallels between mental health and physical health, and I think it's really interesting that you work as a PT, but most of our listeners wouldn't need a definition of physical strength. Like
Mm,
everyone just seems to understand what physical strength is. So,
mm,
how would I define mental strength? I would say that that is to do with resilience,
mm,
to do with a lack of mental ill health. I'm not saying that mental health comes around as a form of mental weakness at all, but just an absence of mental ill health, a presence of resilience, and I suppose ultimately the ability to control your thoughts, or 10% more ability to control your thoughts, to not overthink, to not allow yourself to get anxious or stressed or depressed. So 10% more ability to avoid that mental ill health. That's how I define mental strength.
brilliant.
And you reckon you'd go for 10% more mental strength rather than 10% more physical strength?
Yeah, no, I love that. I think I was going to say, does resilience come into it? I think the way I see it is if you are mentally stronger, that opens up so many opportunities in life. And I think again that I don't know whether like confidence would come into that as well.
Yeah,
Um, if I was mentally stronger, I would feel more confident to put myself out there even more so, and take risks, things like that, which are going to allow me to grow as a person. If in terms of physical side of things, I think there's only so much you can improve on there with physical strength, unless you had a physically demanding job.
yeah.
Um, whereas mental strength, there are so many different avenues you could go down, I think. So that's kind of my reason for that.
I think that's a great answer. Um, and to to be totally honest, all I had done was thought of the question there, and I hadn't really anticipated what your answer might be. But actually, I really love that as an answer, and the idea of being more likely to take risks, and that from risk comes growth. I love that as a thought process. Yeah, good.
I just I don't know if I can think, and so this is what I'm posing to both of you. I don't know if I could think of a situation where somebody would choose physical over mental. I can't get my head around that. Can you guys think of a scenario where somebody might pick physical over mental?
I mean, the new Gladiator movie is about to come out, and if I was about to fight a lion, I would be taking the 10% more physical strength immediately. Thank you.
yeah,
I
I
still
see
I
that.
still don't know.
Oh, come on, Brad! You're fighting a lion, for God's sakes.
Yeah, so you're gonna be terrified. You're gonna need the 10% mental strength.
You could be right. You could be right. It could be about staying in that optimal zone of functioning, couldn't it?
Yeah, because I at first I kind of thought, well, maybe like a boxer or some sort of combat sport. But then I don't know.
Mm,
When I trained to be a hypnotherapist, when we did sports performance, one of the guest speakers we had was a guy called Glenn Catley. I don't know if you've heard of Glenn Catley. He was a boxer. Um, so he basically talked us through how he had hypnotherapy for kind of a big fight. He was a world champion, so he used hypnotherapy in the build up to that, and he was going into the fight knowing that he wasn't really as good a boxer as who his opponent was, and that the odds were against him. So he used hypnotherapy in order to get the mental gains. And one of the things he talked about that was really, really interesting was that he didn't want the other boxer, his opponent, I can't remember who it was now, his opponent, when he hit him, he didn't want to show him any impact of that. So he knew it was going to hurt, obviously. But what he wanted to do was get into his opponent's head that he was throwing everything at Glenn, and actually, Glenn, like nothing was happening. Even though, like in his head, he was like he could have been all over the place. He didn't want to falter at all, and that's what he worked on. And there was all kinds of little examples like that. So I think even in such a physical thing, I just don't think you can get away from the importance of the mental gains.
It's a very good point, Brad.
Yeah, it's always I think mental comes into it. Again, like I said earlier, there are so many different kind of avenues you could go down with having 10% more mental strength. But yeah, it always comes in, like you said, when you mentioned boxing there, it's massively mental in terms of calculating your next move, and that resilience, as you said as well.
Yeah.
It's such a huge thing because you've got to take a hit as well.
And I tell you what else, I reckon, thinking now about the answer, if you had 10% more mental strength, you could probably use that to grow your physical strength as much as you wanted. You could probably use your additional mental strength to be more dedicated, to follow a routine more closely, to be more disciplined, I suppose is the word I'm looking for. You could probably use that mental strength in order to gain increased physical strength as well. Right, we're going to go for your second one. We sometimes throw in a silly one, Seb. This is a silly-ish one. It's based in a fantasy world, and it only applies to you. So, would you rather that people could see fluctuations in your mental health? So, like maybe you've got an LED panel on your forehead, or you have to wear a badge or something that says how you're feeling today, and it's live. It updates like instantly. So, would you rather people could see fluctuations in your mental health, or they couldn't see fluctuations in your physique? So you, as you said, you're in pretty decent shape. You're a young, active guy. Would you rather that they could see how you're feeling any time of day, or they couldn't see any of the physical benefits that you're getting from the exercise you're doing? So you could commit to an exercise regime that would normally get you in remarkable shape, but people just can't see a change in your physique. Which would you rather? They can see how you feel, or they can't see the changes that you're getting through training.
Well, when you said that initially, I was like, do I want people to see how I feel? When you mentioned that, have you seen this? I don't want to go slightly off topic, but
we always go off topic.
Have you seen those badges that you can wear, and you got your social battery badge? That's what kind of reminded me.
Good point.
Have you seen that? Yeah. Just remember.
Do you know, I only saw that yesterday. I saw that yesterday on socials. I was going to mention it. That's amazing.
And I was like, yeah, that's amazing. I'd love one of them. But I think if I'd probably choose that, I'd say the mental side of things, because it would, in the hopes that it would encourage people to speak up a bit more. Like if someone could see how you were actually feeling, if you were slightly dipped, they might be like, oh, what's wrong? Are you okay? Check in a little bit more. And you wouldn't be forced to put on this front, that everything's fine.
Yeah.
So in that respect, I think that would be good. And I just think it would be a bit strange. I think it would be a bit strange just seeing my body just change.
We've had lots of conversations on the show about Brad. You asked someone a question once about a parrot that would just squawk out. Squawk out how someone's feeling and kind of give away their secrets, as it were. And I just, the link between physical health and mental health, I think people never seem to mind other people noticing fluctuations in their physical health, whereas people do seem to mind people noticing fluctuations in their mental health, but they happen all the time to all of us anyway. But it's just, I think that it's because I could tell you now I'm feeling great, even if I wasn't, that because we can hide the state of our mental health, we're just used to hiding the state of our mental health. And like you said about social media, because social media is trying to push the most positive version of yourself out there, it's easy for people to start to think everyone's life is brilliant, everyone's life is amazing, and everyone feels great and amazing, and nobody feels depressed and stressed and anxious and all the rest of it. Whereas actually you're looking at the positives and thinking you could become a beacon for destigmatizing the fluctuations in mental health that we all have, that we absolutely all have. But you could, I'm thinking of it maybe being a mutation, like just suddenly on your forehead this LED panel appears that says, like, maybe it's like green arrows pointing up or red arrows pointing down or something like that. I think the world would be a better place for more things like that. Maybe I'm off on a tangent.
I think you are off on a tangent now. You're going too deep with your LED forehead, but it's fascinating, isn't it? And
not my LED forehead.
I think you should organise it. I think you should get it organised, Matt.
Hello, Dragon's Den.
Yeah.
But I think it's so interesting because and how you summed it up there, Seb, because you chose the mental health and showing that, and you chose it from you said about it going some way to help people talking, and we wouldn't have to hide it and things like that. But when you thought about it, you opened with the first thing you questioned yourself out loud was, do I want people to know how I'm feeling? And so immediately, just that little snippet of the show, I think encapsulates so many men. Like, actually, yes, they do. Not only because it would make their life easier, but because it would help other men to recognise that actually they're feeling great, or they're feeling low, or they're somewhere in the middle. And I just think that's so important, and it's just part of this challenge that we've got, because I think men, there's such a collective cause now that people know men's mental health isn't good, and they wanna try and do something about it. But at the same time, we're all like, yeah, but I don't know if I want to share. And I can even thinking about this show, like we get guests on and they talk about their experiences. When I think back to my episode, I'm like, yeah, I talked about a bit, but I didn't talk about all of it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's that stigma of how we break that. So I think we might have to go with the LED forehead thing. It's the only way we're going to crack it.
It's going to be a brighter future with it, I think.
I'm having loads of thoughts about imagining what that could look like. I've decided I'm totally going to ask you 4 would you rathers, Seb, instead of the normal 3, just because I think the 4th one is going to be an interesting one. In fact, I'm going to ask you the 4th one next, and then the 3rd one 4th. Anyway, as a PT who also helps to improve people's mental health, do you personally feel more pressure to present yourself as being physically healthy or mentally healthy? Now, we're really sorry to leave you on a cliffhanger like that. The second part of Seb's episode is out next Sunday, so tune in then to hear the rest of what he's got to say about his work in the fitness industry, but from a mental health perspective, and also to hear all of our takeaways from the conversation, the things that you can add to your mindset, which will hopefully help you to improve your mental health almost instantly. We'll see you next Sunday.